As I said, we've got the floor plan here, from the tab, and you'll see at this stage, this is going to be in this back right-hand corner, the area that I'm going to be designing or building the kitchen in. And so I'm just going to zoom that up, onto the drawing screen. And within the 3D, using the 3D viewer, I'm just going to spin around and basically be walking in through the rear of the house, through this window at this stage right now, so that you can see basically the space that we're going to be working with. When this is all completed, we will have kitchen cabinets running on either side of the walls. We're going to place an island in the middle. We're going to talk about all of the finishes that can be put into this semi-custom kitchen. And so there's going to be a lot that we're going to cover. For that reason, I am going to keep your microphones muted throughout the teaching portion of the class to try and keep feedback down to a minimum. There is a chat there that you can type in questions, etc., and I will try to acknowledge those questions as we're working through this for the next 40 minutes or so. And then have a brief Q&A at the end of the session. So with that said, I'm going to get started, and I'm going to begin inside the main floor plan rather than inside the 3D to begin drawing and laying this out. SoftPlan ships with a host of kitchen cabinets that are already built into the software, and also a complete list of symbols, both generic and manufacturers. And you're going to see me reach for a lot of the manufacturers, and the reason for that is if I'm designing a kitchen, I'm often driving towards not only the bill of materials, but the 3D perspective, because nothing sells the house like a kitchen or a well-done bathroom. And so in this case here, if I come in through the draw and symbol, you'll see I've got my generic list of symbols that are here. And even if I go into kitchen, I've got a host of generic appliances. And these do the trick. They're dimensionally correct, etc. But in a lot of cases, our clientele are sophisticated. They're looking for their example of their symbols, built right into the model. And so it's quite possible that you're going to want to come down into a given, set list of manufacturers that are here. And, whether it's KitchenAid or in this case, I'm going to be going into Gen Air as being where I'm going to be drawing my symbols from. And this is I'm accessing these from the SoftPlan Plus library at this stage. And so from here, I can go into the refrigerators, and you will see that I've got a host of refrigerators that are available to me. And so as I'm clicking on these, I've got my three-dimensional preview that comes up, and I can see what my symbols are going to look like as far as the 3D is concerned. And so in this case here, I'm just looking for probably something like this, which is a counter depth cabinet or symbol, the 72-inch cabinet depth French door refrigerator. And so with this selected, I can move my cursor into the drawing screen, click to start, and click to insert. And so that's going to draw that refrigerator into place. And again, you're going to see me going back and forth quite a bit as far as drawing within the 2D and the 3D so that I can get a visual. Okay. And so at this stage right now, it's drawn that in. I'm going to drop into my setup options for right now, and as far as the lighting is concerned, just brighten the model up so that we can see. I'll be more concerned about shadows in probably about 15 minutes or so once we get some cabinets in and start to get some lighting placed as well. So I'm just simply brightening the model up right now by turning off some of the custom shadows and lighting that goes with the model. Back inside the main floor plan now, I can come in through draw and I can begin to add my cabinets. Now there are, just like with the symbols, manufacturers that are available there, and then we'll also have the ability to go in and just simply draw generic symbols in at this time. And once the generic symbols have been selected, they could always be edited or modified, if you will, to a manufacturer that's there. But basically what I'm going to be doing is just coming in and selecting, if you will, the width of the cabinet that I want to use. So let's say a 30-inch cabinet, okay? And once I selected that cabinet, I would be able to go in and select, what the faceplate is going to look like, as well as once I pick that style, in this case, I'm just going with a square panel, as you can see, I could then modify a number of doors or drawers that I'm going to use on said cabinet. And so when I do this and I click OK, it gives me the cabinet that's there, and I can now position my cursor where I want the cabinet to be drawn and even move it into place, at this stage, because I'm just simply, running the design. And so from this point forward now, using the base cabinets as my start point, I can pick, the different styles once again. And so I'm just modifying this on the fly as we go, and I can even pick from the predefined settings that are down here, okay, for my depending on what it is I'm trying to do with my cabinets. So I'm just going to go with a standard, two-door cabinet at this stage, position my cursor where I want it to be, or let's see. Let's get one with a single drawer on here, something like so, and I will click OK, and I'm just going to pan and click to start and click to finish. And as I do that, what it's going to do is it's going to snap the cabinets together. A simple Control E will explode so I can see the cabinets, and I can even use like Draw Select, for example, to place a similar cabinet on the other side. So what I've done is I've drawn this cabinet and I placed it on the other side, next to the B36D. And so again, just using Draw Select, I'm just drawing in a couple of cabinets, in a row. And you'll see that as I do that, I'll be able to come into the 3D and we can begin to see what the cabinets are going to look like. Now, things like finishes, we'll get to all of that. What we're really doing right now is just simply getting the right sizes in as far as the placement is concerned. You can see that I'm focusing on, having a bank of drawers for the most part coming across here, and you can at any time come in and add individual smaller cabinets and so on. So in this case I'll come in and just select a 12-inch. I really just want to have one door on this and one drawer, okay, and so once I've selected the style of cabinet that I'm looking for, I could then add that in like so. And so that gets me my base cabinets in running across this side over here. Now, in a similar fashion, as soon as I run a cleanup, it's going to automatically, join those cabinets together on the drawing screen, and in time, I'll come back and I'll begin to add things like various custom symbols, etc., to lay out the appliances. In the event or that I want to have things like, let's say, a double oven and etc. And so what I'm going to do is, and for some of this, I'm just going to use some of the generics that I'm familiar with. And so I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to select a 30-inch cabinet to begin with. And you see that I tend to leave the this up on the drawing screen. So I'm going to add 3 of those along here, and I may move this run of cabinets so that I'm either using the temporary dimension that's there or just doing it by eye to get it close to the trim. But once this is set, I'm going to place, let's say, a double oven at the end of the cabinets that listed, right here. And so in this case, I may actually come in just to show the manufacturers that are there. And so we've got a whole host of them that are that you're probably familiar with. There may be cabinets that you actually reach for in here. I'm going to select, let's say, the Armstrong, one that I'm a little more familiar with. And then from this list, I could go into the tall and select from the oven cabinets that are there. And so once I select this, I can go down and select the oven cabinet that I'm looking for, and now in this case I'll select OK, and I'm just going to position the cabinet to place it in. And so as we take a look, and I begin to pan around, you'll see that already I've got my base cabinets as well as my oven cabinets set in place. Now, the upper cabinets will be drawn in a similar fashion, and so I'll be able to come in through the main floor plan, and in a lot of cases, we're trying to match these things up, right? And so I'm going to explode, just hitting Control E once again with my cursor hovered over these individual cabinets, and I can now come in through the cabinet, and this time I could select that I'm going to be drawing wall cabinets or upper cabinets. And so when I do that, again, I'm going to match the width that's on there, and in this case, you can see there's how I can change the panel, and I can also come in and change in this case, I want to change the 2-door layout to a glass grill. And so by selecting the door type and modifying that from standard to glass grill, I'm going to get exactly that as far as the preview is concerned. And so once I've selected this and pressed OK on this, all right, I'll then be able to go in and also specify things like what the height or the depth is going to be as far as the cabinets are concerned. And so here, I mean, the depth is fine, but I might change the height to, say, 42 inches. So I've now got a deeper cabinet prior to drawing this, which gives me a top height of 96 inches or 8 feet, and that's going to match the top of the actual wall cabinet that's here. And so now I'm just going to, turn my snap feature on so that I can, snap this in behind the, the existing cabinets that are here. And so now at this stage, as I take a look at this, I've now got my upper cabinets, okay, being placed with the glass doors. All right. With these glass doors, you'll be able to come in and modify them after the fact. And this is where you could go in and begin to, on an individual basis, add things like shelving. Now, this is not only important for the 3D, but you'll also be able to do that for the bill of materials. And so I'm just coming in here and repeating, this edit so that we can actually see the glass shelving running across these cabinets. There'll be other things like hardware and crown molding, etc., that we can do, but that's just kind of getting a quick view of what this, is going to look like. And so again, just using my arrow keys and my mouse, I'm just kind of panning around so that we can begin to, lay out some of the appliances as well as some of the upper cabinets that are going to be placed. Okay, so we've kind of done this side over here. I'm going to explode and take a look at these cabinets over here as well, and this is where I'm now going to come in through Draw and Symbol and gain access back into my Gen Air and if you will, all of the matching appliance symbols that I want to use. And so in the case of, this list over here, I'm going to go with a cooktop is what I'm planning to use. And so there is a host of different, cooktops that, listed in this. And so if I select, let's say this one right here, which is a 36-inch, and again, I can now just click to, add that or insert that on top of the existing cabinet that is there. All right, so I'm just, setting that in place, and as I take a look at it inside the 3D of it, and so that gets basically the cooktop in place. Now I can do the same thing inside, the floor plan where I'll come in through here, and now I'm just going to go to ventilation, and let's just take a look. There's a number of different, symbols here for ventilation, and of course some of this is knowing certain manufacturers, okay, what ones you're used to working with. So the snap feature that I use is really just this little icon in the upper left-hand corner. You'll see me in a drawing class. I typically use a lot of shortcuts. So while this icon will do it, the F11 snap feature will turn that on for you as well, and it acts as a toggle. And that's a great way to be able to snap cabinets or items together so that they find one another, whether it's endpoint or center point. All right, and so I'm going to come back into Symbol, and this time I'm actually looking at the wall ovens right here, and a lot of these are fairly similar. I'm more concerned about the width matching up as far as that's concerned, and so I'm just going to click to insert, and this is where I'm going to start beginning to pop back into the 3D. So we've got the ventilation, that's there. We've got the cooktop that's there, and now I've got, if you will, this, double oven, and as far as the snap's concerned, there's clearly a few things I'm going to do, to pull this outside the cabinet just a little bit so that we get that, flush to the face, because I snapped it to the drywall. It's when I put my snap feature on. And then in some cases here, I could either, modify the math, or I'm just doing a move, and I could go ahead and move that into place. Okay, and there's obviously different things that I could do. This cabinet that I selected needs to be changed on the fly because it's actually showing that I've got some drawers, so it's not technically big enough for what I'm attempting to do. And so I'm just going to come in and I'm going to edit this cabinet right here, and I'm going to come in through the tall cabinet, and I'm just going to scroll down and take a look at this one's actually got a single drawer, so that should make the opening a little bit larger, so I'll click OK, and this now fits. Okay, so I had selected something for a smaller oven, and so now just coming in through a edit and going through the product codes, and just picking something that had a larger hole, less drawers, allows me to piece that together and set it in place. Okay, so at this stage now we've already got a cabinet layout running down the right-hand side. Down the left-hand side, we've begun to place these cabinets in. We'll probably place some upper cabinets here in just a few moments. And then we're going to place a large island in the middle. And I'm going to use some base cabinets, and I'm going to customize the cabinets to fit my design, as if we're treating it like a custom island being built. Okay? And so what I'd like to do is inside the main floor plan, I can see all of my dimensions, and I might even, at this stage, I'm just going to pick Draw Select, and I'm going to pick this glass cabinet to drop one in there. And I may also come in through the wall cabinet, and because I've just got a 12-inch and I'm not really drawn a 12-inch upper cabinet at this stage, so we're going to go to a single door, okay, and in fact I might even go to a just a glass grill at this point. Click OK, and I'll change the height, which is going to be 42 inches so that it matches, and now I can click to insert so that I've got just some upper cabinets sitting here. So I am going with all glass cabinets, etc., for right now. Maybe in time I'll even turn that off and have that open up into just, standard shelving, as far as that goes. So that's basically where we're at this point. So let's go ahead and place the island in the middle, and then once we've done that, we'll be able to, I'm going to start playing around with a little bit of lighting and some of the custom cabinet options that we can modify as well. So inside the main floor plan, and I'm going to save this just so we don't lose anything, and I'll come in through Draw and Cabinet and back to the base. And so I've got my listing of base cabinets, right here, and I'm just going to come in and I'm going to select, let's say a B30D, so it's got two doors and it's got a drawer, panel that's going to be there, and I'm just going to click to insert the one, in place. And I may even place a second one at the rear. And so what I'm going to do now is using the dimension tool and turning on symbol dimension, I can actually run a dimension between the two cabinets, because this is going to be huge, right, as far as getting the floor space, being right there. And so if I want, like a 42-inch, I can see that as I push this back and forth, it's not going to give me the room that I need for the cabinets themselves. And so in this case here, I might edit this cabinet, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and change the cabinets as far as their depths are concerned, and I'm going to change this one to an 18-inch, and I'm going to do the same thing, here. And so by doing that, that's going to free me up some space. You can see that these are much, narrower in depth. They're not as narrow as the 12-inch, but we're going to put some 18-inch cabinets in on either side. And so now what we're doing is we're actually customizing these cabinets to get them to where we want them to be. And so I may just come in and do a block move of this and move it 6 inches over. And so now I've roughly gotten, as far as my design is concerned right now, what I want for my dimensions. And so let's save that, and using the Draw Select, at this point now I can pick this cabinet, draw it back to back. I can also begin to draw a series of them down in a row, okay, where I want them to be placed. Now these can also be edited on the fly. So as I'm editing these cabinets, I might come in and edit this one and decide that I want it to be, let's say, a width of 24 inches. Okay, so as I'm, even as I'm piecing them together, it will clean it back up, and then I can, draw another one in, and, what I'm basically doing is working on the size. And so I'm going to edit this next cabinet and just change its custom width to, let's say, 36 inches. And the reason that I'm doing that is this is going to afford me the room to place a large sink in there, as I'm building the island. And so I will clean up, and I'm going to do a save. Now at all times I can, once I do that cleanup, you can see how the large island, basically builds as one large unit. There's the breakdown of what the cabinets are going to look like. And so again, I'm going to add an extra one in there. And as you're looking at these cabinets, so as I'm beginning to build this, what I'm looking to do is actually create a cove there where we can actually just kind of slide in a couple of stools, okay? So that's going to basically mean I need to come in and maybe customize or change the, what the counter is doing itself. So for the sake of what we're doing, I'm going to edit this right now. I'm going to turn the countertop off. And I'm going to, through Edit, Repeat Edit Box, I'm going to do the exact same thing to all of the cabinets. And so as you take a look at it in 3D, we just have the boxes in place, okay? And so I'll save that because what this will afford me to do now is I could come in through Draw and Cabinet and Countertop, now customize or draw where this is going to be, and I'll change this to a dashed line so that it matches what I'm doing over here. Now, technically this could all be dimensioned in. When you're going through a class like what we're doing today, I'm doing a little bit of it by eye, but I could certainly, as I say, adjust or do dimensioning. But what I've done now is, you can see, I'm just going to adjust the overhangs a little bit by eye on this. All right, and I can, adjust wherever I want as far as the counter depth is concerned. But as I take a look at it, I now have been able to create a custom counter with the overhang. So if I want to put a post in there to hold that, etc., or some sort of a bracket, to hold up the end, I can do that. But it will allow me to now come in and inside the main floor plan, edit an individual edge and even give it things like, what the nosing is going to be. As far as the countertop is concerned, I could give it a radius and change that, on the fly as well. So those are all different options that you can do, okay, as far as, so if I key this in at 2 feet, that's going to be too big. Oops, wrong way. So I've just typing in a 6 or a 4-inch curve is actually going to, curve this out now. And just kind of give me a focal point, if you will, on that. All right, so let's save that, and let's, I'm going to come into the 3D and, just back up a little bit, and we can begin to see what we've got as far as the design is concerned. All right, we might want to put a cabinet over top of the refrigerator that's there, and so based on the fact that it is a 72-inch tall cabinet or refrigerator that's there, I will come in through Cabinet. I'm going to select Wall. And I'll pick the, let's say, 36-inch, which is what the width is going to be. I definitely am not going to put, glass over top of this, so I'll change it back to a standard. And we're just going to go with a standard 2-door. Now from here, with the 36-inch width, I could determine if I wanted it to be deeper. Instead of the 12 inches, maybe we're going to have this come all the way out so it's the full depth of the actual cabinet itself. And I can also change the offset, knowing that this is going to be, 72 inches, so that it sits atop the actual fridge. That's going to force me to also change the height on the fly, and so based on the 72 by the 24, that gets me my top height of 96 inches, which matches all of the upper cabinets that we already have in there. Again, the snap feature will allow me to actually snap that into place, where I want it to actually go on the over top of the refrigerator. So, having drawn this into place, let's take a look at some of the modifications that we can do as far as editing the actual cabinets themselves. Now, as far as editing the cabinets and so on, and getting the all of the different properties that are going to be placed in there, we're also going to take some time to put some lighting in. And so this is what I'd like to do right now, just because the lighting is going to be so important to the 3D down the road. And so we're going to be coming in, and I'm just going to be pulling some of these out from our different libraries that are in there. And so inside the main floor plan, again, I'm going to change into electrical mode. And so when I change into electrical mode and I can see all of the layout of the cabinets, etc., I can now come in through draw and electrical symbols, and from here I can now go into, ceiling lights. And in this case, I will go into the SoftPlan Plus and I'm going to click on the contemporary, and as I go down and take a look at the various symbols, this is the one I'm probably going to use over top of the island. And so I'm just going to, click to start and, place that in place, and then I could actually just come in and using a copy feature for today, I could, copy a couple of these, along the island itself. Now, in time, I would probably dimension those in, but at least for right now, that's going to begin to cast some, shadows and lighting for us, and also allow us to see color schemes and how they're all going to, tie in together. So again, I can now come into the electrical symbols, and I'm just going to do a quick search. And so I do a search for, let's say, can lighting. And this is just a generic one that we're going to use right here, but I'm going to, place one of these in, and in a similar fashion, I can now come along and just do a copy of this, and, just do multiple copies, and I'll draw the similar symbol over here, and I'm going to copy this. And what I want to do is just show you how adding lighting to this model is going to, allow you to really make a difference in how the overall, color schemes, etc., will display and show. And so as I pop back into the 3D, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into our setup options, and under textured and lighting, I'm going to begin to turn on things like the default ambient light, and how we can now begin to have shadows and tone mapping taking place, and you can begin to see the depth within the kitchen, from our various selections that we have made at this point. Okay, so this is just all of the lighting, and again, as we begin to color and paint these walls and add trims and hardwoods, that lighting is going to really begin to impact, what we're doing inside the model. Now, these light sources, you can edit them, and you can change on the fly what their default lighting is doing. So in this case, I'm simply editing these lights and brightening them up. And as I do that, it's going to impact, again, the model, and, what shadows we're going to see, and how surfaces are going to be lit, etc. Inside the main floor plan and back inside the drawing mode for right now, having, done what we've done, I can take a look at this, and I'm going to come in and I'm just going to add a faucet as well as a kitchen sink to go in here. Okay, so I'm going to change away from the Gen Air, and I'm just going to scroll up to Kohler for right now, and so I'm going to click on the sinks. Now, we give you all of the previews that are here, so depending on if you have people that are designing for you, etc., they may spec them out by product code. Okay, so you could come in here to the listing and just see simply the product code that's being called out, so that at that stage then, as you're drawing it, you've actually got the correct symbol as well, by instead of just doing the three-dimensional view. All right, so once I've got this in place, I'm going to do a similar thing where I want to come in and edit the actual put in a kitchen faucet. And so again, I'll just come in through draw and symbol, and from here I'm just going to go down into the list of manufacturers, and this is, I think I'm going to be going into let's see, I'll close this one up, and we're going to go to SoftPlan Plus at this stage. And if I take a look, I believe, yeah, we've got some decent ones right here. And so I'm going to go into kitchen and faucets, and so we've got a whole host of them. And again, if I go into the displaying them across, this might make show you what we've got. And so now I'm just going to click to start and click to finish. And as I take a look, I've now got the kitchen sink, I've got the faucet. I'm going to move it back just ever so slightly so that it's not sitting right inside the sink. So we're getting there. All right, we've been at it for 25 minutes. We've got a lot laid out. Let's talk a little bit about the modifying, if you will, of the individual cabinet pieces, okay? So earlier I showed you just how to put shelves in, but there's a lot more to cabinets than just that. So I can come in through the edit item feature, and I could edit, for example, this individual cabinet. Now I can change things like, what the finish is going to be. So if I take this to painted, you can see obviously that it paints the individual individual cabinets. I'll be able to go into accessories, and from here, this is where I can change things like what the hardware is going to look like, and it begins to add that different types of finishes right there. Okay, and so that's going to, obviously I'll also do that for me as well. And I'll be able to go in and modify, in time what the, countertop material is going to be, etc., as far as the actual finish. But for right now, if I click on this, I'm just going to change this into marble, and you'll see it's going to color code it black, and so we get that as an option. I can add the nosing, and from the list of nosings that are here, I can then go through and pick what the custom nosing is going to look like on the kitchen cabinet at this stage, and it puts that nosing in there across the front. Now, because these cabinets are bound together, all of those options are going to take place as well on the fly. Okay, so all of that can be done just right here. Now, other things that we may wind up doing might be to add something like a tile backsplash. And so if I go into accessories, this is where I can add this to the option, and what you'll see right now is it just puts a beige color in the background. In time, I'd like to actually put on like a stamped metal backdrop to that, so that'll be a texture option that we do. So I'll click OK, and again, I'm just going to come in. I'm going to edit this cabinet right here. I'm going to change it to painted. I'm going to go into the accessories, and I'm going to change the hardware to match. And so when I do that, and I might come in here and add crown molding to the cabinet. And so when I click OK, I get the crown molding, and I'll just do a repeat edit, over here, so I get the crown molding, etc. Okay, so just making the modifications as we go. I'll come over here to this side as well, and so edit. So this is just kind of a recap. We're going to go in, we're going to change this to painted. Under the countertop, we're going to change that to marble. We will add nosing to it to match what we had on the other side, so we're getting all of that in. And finally, under accessories, we're going to come in and we're going to match the bottom hardware to it, so we can see what the picture actually looks like, and click OK. All right. The upper cabinets, it was the same thing, and so this is, and again, you could have different finishes, if you will, top and bottom, okay, depending on what you want to do. And I'm just adding a crown mold in here on this, and so I will click at that stage OK, and do a repeat edit on this end. All right, so very quickly, we've now got the kitchen cabinets, kind of coming into play. Now, things like on an individual basis, all right, so I can edit this this drawer, set of drawers that are right here, all right, and one of the things, if I go into the base cabinet, okay, as I'm taking a look at this and I click on the square panel, all right, I can actually change what the different faces are going to look like right here. I can also change whether I want butt face, frameless, inset, etc. So all of that can be done, okay, depending on what it is that you're wanting to do as far as that setup is concerned. Okay, you can also, if I click on the face layout, right now you see I've got flat. So if I want these recessed to give a little more depth and detail, you can see that being applied there. And now I'm just going to repeat edit just by doing a right click and repeat edit on each of the cabinets. All right, it's going to apply that same change so that we get kind of a better or a more depth, if you will, to the cabinet drawers themselves. So over here, because I want to keep the doors and not the cabinets that are there, I'm just going to zoom this up, and I do a right click, I do an edit. Okay, and then once I've done this on this side right here, I'm just going to go to the base cabinet. I'm actually going to click on what the face layout looks like, and now I'm going to check this as being recessed on the actual drawer itself. Okay, and so once I've got that as my option, click OK, and it applies it. And now I just simply repeat edit that same change down to the other cabinets that are there. Now, the And this is going to, someone asked a question about adding a panel to the side, and you can absolutely do that, okay? And so what I'm doing is I'm just kind of, I was going to tackle it with the island that's right here. And so one of the things that we can do is I'm editing this individual cabinet that's right here, okay? And you can see on the cabinet run, we have left and right, panels that we can actually, apply to this. And so as I do that, okay, it's going to add the panel on the end, and I can actually change what that panel is going to look like, and so I can just pick so that it matches with the other cabinets as well. So we could do the same thing on the upper cabinets that are there. I'm quickly changing a few of the things on this so that it just matches up as far as the paint color is concerned, and the accessories, so that we can get all of these applied. And let's come into just so that it matches. Click OK. And I will do a repeat edit on the rest of these cabinets running down the side here. Okay, and so I'm basically just, getting the finishes all applied, doing it inside the 3D. These ones have been joined together, so we were good on that. Now, as far as I want to get some interiors into this, before too much time gets away from us on this, and so I'm going to. There's multiple ways that you can do this. Some of you may be familiar with the room mode, and what the room mode does is it allows you to come in and draw an entire room, and when you add that room, it then allows you to go in and using check boxes, you can add and different interior finishes, etc. And that allows you, if you're, especially if you're painting an entire room one color, you need baseboard all the way around. That is a great way to do it. Okay, you can also control these finishes from an interior mode. And the interior mode will allow you to go in and place them on an individual basis. So, for example, I can come in through flooring, and I could pick hardwood 1. And either manual or auto trace it and click to place. And when I do that, you're going to see that it places hardwood throughout. Okay, and so now I have the hardwood being added all the way throughout the model. And the same thing could be done inside the same main floor plan. I could come in through draw and wall covering, and in this case right here, I'm just going to pick wall covering 21. So I'm actually going to do a manual trace, and in this case now I'm just going to click and run that paint pattern or that wall covering across only the end wall down here. Okay, so I could actually have this having a different wall covering than over here. And so in this case now, I've got wall covering 21, or if I just wanted to keep that, leave that as one of the paint colors that's there, paint 1. I could then come in through wall covering and pick paint number 2. In this case, I'm going to now manually trace this paint pattern, down on the other 3 walls of the kitchen. Okay, so in this case now, I'm going to actually have different paint patterns that are going to be available to me for modification. So I could come in and I could do a surface edit on paint number 1. And we have a listing of different paint chips or configurations, color swatches that are in there. Because I'm more familiar with Sherwin-Williams as far as their colors are concerned, that's the only reason I'm just going for there. But I could now go through this and either by eye pick out the paint color that I want to use, or I could just if I know the actual swatch number, I could select from this that I want, let's say, needlepoint navy, for example, or swatch 0032 over on this wall right here. Okay, and then and click OK. And the same thing over on this wall right here, I could then edit what that wall is going to be, and I'm just going to, again, change to Sherwin-Williams. I'm going to scroll this down, and I'm looking for a specific one, just some colors that I've used in the past, as far as, settings are concerned. So these are listed. I'm actually listing them by the number, if you will, which is what makes it a little easier for me to find what I'm looking for. And so now I'm just going to pick this mountain air option. And so you can see now I've got an accent wall versus more of a, lighter colored wall for the other 3. And so the same thing with the hardwood that's down here. Okay, I'm just going to, edit this hardwood, and I'm going to, so just right click and do a surface edit on it, and it pulls up the list of hardwoods that are here. And I'm just going to scroll down, and I'm going to go into the manufacturers for the interiors. Let me have a quick look at what I'm looking for here. Got my interior finish. There's my manufacturer, what I'm looking for. Okay, and then I'm actually looking, let's see, I'll go into the SoftPlan Plus, and I'm looking for specific floorboard. There we go. And so now as I click on this, it's going to open up a list of different hardwoods that are available for me. So if I want something maybe a little bit lighter that I'm going to use, I'll click OK. And now I've got kind of that, you can see the light hardwood. I can see the different colors. Now I don't have baseboard and all that in there yet, but it's coming along. Okay, so that's just, adding some interiors. And this is why I want to have the light sources in play. Okay, now you don't always have to use SoftPlan, plus symbols to get everything that you want. There's nothing wrong with coming in and doing a surface edit, and we've got a host of other different types of materials that are in there. And so you could certainly under the marble, you can pick from the different textures that are here and just scroll through until you find the texture that you want to use. And so you can see it's updating this on the fly. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to change this from if I do an item edit, okay, I could actually change this from granite to marble so that it matches what I'm doing with the other colors. And it's a great thing to show because some of you may want to have maybe a wood block for the island as opposed and then marble out here on either side. Now I told you, that earlier that we wanted to add things like baseboards and even some shelving and so on. And so one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm just going to come into the I'm inside the interior mode, and I may just come in through baseboard, and I'll pick colonial, and I'm just going to auto trace this in and just have it placed along the drawing, and it's just going to find it for me. Okay, so again, looking at it from a 3D perspective, I see my baseboard in there. I've got my, all of my light fixtures in. So I think the next thing I'm going to do is just show you how you can add, maybe some shelving, using a reclaimed, type wood, that's going to be there. And so what I'll do is inside the main floor plan and inside the drawing mode, I'm going to zoom this up. Now you might think of rod and shelf as just that it's something that you're going to do only in a scenario where it's for closets, etc. But you could actually edit this, and you can turn things like the rod off. And now I could come in and I could change what the default depth is. I'm going to, because I don't want it too deep. I don't want people running into it, if you will. And I can even change the spacing on this so that when I change this to have 3 shelves, every 15 inches I'm going to place one, and they're only going to be 8 inches in depth. And then lastly, I can create what the offset is going to be. So now I could just key this in and type it in at 5 feet. And so when I come back into the 3D, I've actually placed my shelving on here. And you could edit it from this if you wanted to change the thickness on this and bulk it up a little bit. So now we've got something along that lines. And then finally, the surface edit on this would allow me to now come in, and I could inside the textures, I can now start going in and changing what the finish is going to be on this. If I'm looking for something that would. And so I'm just going to grab a weathered, texture. I've now got my kitchen cabinets all set, etc. I mean, I might come in and, this is where you want to start painting, things like the ceiling to get it a slightly brighter color. Someone had asked about that. And so, you can, start going in here and modifying things like, what that surface is going to be and, just painting it a different white, etc. Okay. So, doing a surface edit on this and just taking a look, I'm just going to turn the emissive or the actual lighting, on the ceiling to get a little bit brighter so we can actually see that. This in a quick 45 minutes is how we can get a kitchen, pulled together that fast. And so one of the things that I'm going to do is just turn on some of the options here at the end so that you can see. So through options and the setup options, I may come in through the textured. I'm going to increase the anti-aliasing, which is just going to make it that much crisper, if you will, as far as the model is concerned. Okay, under lighting, as you've seen already, I've turned the default lighting that's on. And under face options, I might turn things like reflections on, which is just going to get that in place. And so I will hit regenerate and just let that run through very quickly, and we can take a look at it. You can begin to see the the lighting is better, if you will, with the shadows and so on. You're going to begin to see reflections in the various surfaces, the glass, etc. Okay, and let's just let this pull up here. Okay, now a couple of things that we didn't cover on. Okay, so for example, I place a 24-inch cabinet in here. Now I might come in and do an edit on this and replace that cabinet with a symbol. So in this case, a dishwasher, right? So it's just edit the symbol, and then you could go in here and you could modify, that symbol. I click the replace cabinet with symbol, and then I could select that I want to, place, and we're going to assume that we'll stick with the same, manufacturer, and just place the dishwasher in. And now in this case, I can just, modify things like cabinet depth and so on to get all of that set. Okay, so that's one thing that we didn't do. Okay, backsplash options and so on. Now there's multiple ways that you can do this. As I said, on the kitchen cabinets, you can edit them, and you can go in on the actual cabinet run, and you can begin to add things like that you want to have a backsplash running behind it. Okay, you can also, with the countertop, if you wanted to have some sort of a splash height, you can definitely place that in there as well. If you've got different types of different settings as far as the cabinets are concerned, so I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to assign this to be a different type of tile backsplash for right now. And so I'm just working with this cabinet right here, and I'm going to regenerate this quickly because we're dealing with this back here. Okay, so the longer regeneration time is because of the fact that I've got so many options turned on. Okay, so just hang with me. You can see that it's now adding a stone tile in back there by default. This is just the ceramic tile by default that is assigned, and so that's now being added to the back. But that was just a basic edit option on this kitchen cabinet. Okay, and then coming in, and let me just stop that, to the accessories, assigning it, and then in which case you can specify to extend to the wall cabinet or not. Okay, you can determine what the height is of the backsplash option or not. So those are different options that you can modify and set in there. And certainly I could do the same thing on this side, okay, where I come into the accessories. All right, I add the tile backsplash. I'm going to modify this to match what I've got over here, okay, and click OK and allow that to regenerate. Now, I understand with a kitchen cabinet or a kitchen design, there's a lot of things that can be covered, okay, that we did not necessarily cover today. This is just to give you a brief run through of what you can hope to accomplish with this. I hope that it has been helpful to you. This recording will actually be uploaded to our webpage early next week, as I say, so you'll be able to go back through and review it and see things like where these options all come from, okay, where the tile splash comes from, etc. Okay, we hope that you've enjoyed it, and have a great weekend, guys. We will talk to you hopefully next week when we do our next Friday Fundamental, which is basically 3D options.